The day my family kicked me out, they thought they were punishing me. But in truth, they handed me the key to my future, a gift they were blind to. 200 acres of barren Texas land. My brother Thomas tossed the deed at me with a sneer, the paper sliding across our father's polished mahogany desk like a challenge. Enjoy your inheritance, little sister. Hope you like cacti and rattlesnakes. I'm Emma Carter, and this is how my family's attempt to break me turned me into a millionaire. The Carters had ruled Texas for generations. Oil money, old money, the kind that made people forget my grandfather had started as a roughneck working someone else's rig. Now, as I watched my father sign away my trust fund with slow, deliberate strokes of his Montblanc pen, you'd think we'd always been aristocrats. You've made your choice, Emma, he said, not even bothering to glance at me. If you won't follow the family plan, you'll have to make your own way. The family plan. A simple phrase, loaded with suffocating expectations. Marry Bradley Wilson. Merge our oil empires through holy matrimony. Produce heirs to continue the dynasty. It didn't matter that Bradley was a cheating, arrogant bastard. Dad, please, I pleaded one last time. Bradley's been sleeping with half of Houston. The merger can happen without the marriage. Enough. His fist slammed onto the desk. A few indiscretions mean nothing compared to family duty, but you've made your choice. Thomas gets the trust fund. You get your grandfather's worthless plot of land out in West Texas, the one he was too stubborn to sell. My mother sipped her martini, studying her perfectly manicured nails, as though none of this mattered. Really, Emma, you're being dramatic. Bradley's a good match. Every family has its arrangements. I looked at them, my father with his cold, indifferent eyes, my mother in her pristine Chanel suit, Thomas grinning like he'd just hit the jackpot. In a way, he had. My trust fund, worth millions, now belonged to him. Fine, I said, grabbing the deed. Keep your money, keep your merger, keep Bradley, I'll take Grandpa's land. Thomas laughed mockingly. Good luck surviving on rocks and dust. Maybe you can eat the tumbleweeds. I walked out of that office with nothing but a piece of paper, my college degree, and the keys to my old Jeep. They'd already frozen my credit cards and bank accounts. By nightfall, they expected me to be crawling back, begging for forgiveness, ready to marry Bradley and fall in line. They had no idea who they were dealing with. 3 hours later, I drove up to a rusted gate marking the entrance to my new property. The land stretched endlessly, nothing but brush and mesquite trees as far as I could see. A small cabin, weathered yet solid, stood a half-mile from the gate. This was where my grandfather had spent his final years. Everyone said he'd gone mad, refusing to sell the land despite offers worth millions. To my family, it was a relic of stubborn pride, a worthless plot. The key to the cabin was exactly where Grandpa had told me it would be, beneath a fake rock by the back door, along with a letter addressed to me. Dear Emma, if you're reading this, you've probably done something the family doesn't approve of. Good for you. The Carters have forgotten where they came from, but you're different. You've got real oil in your veins, grit, determination, and smarts. This land isn't what they think. I've left everything you need in my study. The combination to the safe is your birthday. Trust yourself, little wildcat. Love, Grandpa. I blinked, my throat tight with emotion. Grandpa had passed 3 years ago, but he'd known, somehow, he'd known I'd end up here. The cabin was simple but livable. Solar panels on the roof still worked, powering the lights and a small air unit. A propane tank fueled the stove and water heater. It wasn't luxury, but it was enough. Grandpa's study was a small room lined with maps and geological surveys. In the floor safe, I found more maps, detailed notebooks, and a thick folder labeled Core Samples 2019. That first night, I pored over everything, my geology degree finally proving useful for something other than disappointing my parents. The more I read, the more my hands trembled. Seismic surveys, geological assessments, core sample analyses, all leading to one stunning conclusion. My phone buzzed. It was Thomas, probably calling to gloat or check if I was ready to give up. I declined the call and kept reading. At dawn, I brewed some coffee and stepped out onto the porch. The rising sun painted the desert in hues of gold and purple. This land wasn't worthless, not by a long shot. Grandpa hadn't been crazy, he'd been brilliant. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Bradley. Emma, babe, don't be stupid, just come back. We can work this out. Your dad's already drawn up the new trust fund papers. All you have to do is say yes. I glanced at the geological report spread out across the kitchen table, then back at the endless expanse of my inheritance. No thanks, Bradley. I think I'll take my chances with the tumbleweeds. Don't be ridiculous. What are you going to do out there alone? Farm rocks? I smiled, recalling Grandpa's meticulous notes. Something like that. Goodbye, Bradley. The next week passed in a blur of research. Grandpa, who had been dismissed as an eccentric old man, had spent his last years carefully documenting what lay beneath this supposedly useless land. But I needed help to validate his findings. More importantly, I needed someone who wouldn't run straight to my family with what we discovered. That's when David Martinez came to mind. He'd been 2 years ahead of me at UT Austin, studying petroleum engineering while I studied geology. Last I heard, he had his own consulting firm, specializing in independent oil prospecting, and most importantly, he hadn't ever been part of my family's world. I found his number and dialed, my heart pounding with anticipation. David, it's Emma Carter. Remember me from UT? I've got a proposition for you. How'd you like to help me prove my family completely wrong? There was a brief silence, followed by a chuckle. Emma Carter asking for help? This should be good. I took a deep breath. I've got 200 acres out in West Texas and some interesting geological surveys. Want to come take a look? Off the record, of course. Send me the coordinates. I'll be there tomorrow. I hung up and gazed out at my land, my empire. Grandpa had known exactly what he was doing when he left this to me. He'd known I was the only one who would see past the surface. My family thought they were punishing me by stripping away their money and handing me this worthless land. But Grandpa's words kept echoing in my mind, "You've got the real oil in your veins." Soon, they'd learn just how right he was. David arrived the next morning in a dusty pickup truck loaded with equipment. He looked exactly like I remembered from college, practical, no nonsense, and sharp as hell. Emma Carter living in a cabin, he said with a grin, shaking his head. Never thought I'd see the day. I spread Grandpa's maps across the kitchen table. What do you think of these? He studied them carefully, his expression shifting from curiosity to surprise to barely contained excitement. Your grandfather did all this? He pointed to the detailed surveys. These are professional grade, and these core samples. He looked up at me. Emma, if these readings are right, I need you to verify them. I can bring in new equipment, run fresh tests, I said, feeling a surge of confidence. He nodded slowly. It'll take a few days, and it won't be cheap. I slid an envelope across the table. 5,000 now, 15 more if you find what I think is down there. And David, not a word to anyone. For the next week, David and his small team worked tirelessly. They brought in ground-penetrating radar, took new core samples, and ran comprehensive tests. I watched them closely, my heart racing every time they exchanged significant glances or whispered in low voices. Finally, David called me over to their mobile lab. You might want to sit down, he said, pulling up complex diagrams on his laptop. Your grandfather wasn't just right, he was more right than he could have ever known. The technical terms flew over my head, porosity ratings, pressure tests, depth calculations, but the conclusion was crystal clear. We were sitting on top of one of the largest untapped oil deposits in West Texas. Conservative estimate? David looked me straight in the eye. About 300 million barrels, could be more, a lot more. I gripped the edge of the table, barely able to breathe. At current prices, that's worth roughly $24 billion, David said quietly, reading my mind, give or take $1 billion. My phone buzzed. It was Thomas. I'd been ignoring calls from my family all week. But this time, I answered. Finally given up on your little camping trip? He sneered. Actually, I'm rather enjoying it. How's the merger going? He paused. What do you know about the merger? Only what everyone knows. Bradley's company is over-leveraged, desperate for cash flow. Dad's company has the cash but needs new drilling rights. A perfect match, right? Just come home, Emma. This rebellion has gone on long enough. I looked at David's laptop screen, the billions of dollars mapped out in neat geological surveys, and smiled. Sorry, Thomas, I'm a bit busy with my worthless dirt. Good luck with Bradley. The next month flew by in a whirlwind of activity. David helped me set up Wild Tomcat Energy, a company named after the nickname Grandpa gave me. We filed drilling permits, negotiated with equipment suppliers, and, most importantly, kept everything under wraps. Then, one morning, I was in the kitchen when I heard the rumble of engines. Multiple vehicles roared up the dirt road, kicking up a cloud of dust. As it cleared, I saw my father's Mercedes, Thomas's Range Rover, and Bradley's absurd Ferrari bouncing along the unpaved track. "What the hell is this?" My father stormed onto my porch, waving a paper. It was a copy of my drilling permit application. "Public record," I said coolly, "private property. You're trespassing." "Like we are?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're drilling on family land." "No," I interrupted, "I'm drilling on my land, the land you so generously gave me, remember?" Bradley stepped forward, his usual swagger replaced with a hint of concern. "Baby, let's be reasonable, you don't know anything about oil extraction, do you?" "Actually," David stepped out from the cabin behind me, "she knows quite a bit, geology degree from UT Austin, remember the one you all said was worthless?" "Who is this?" Thomas demanded. "David Martinez." David smiled, Chief Operations Officer of Wild Tomcat Energy, also, the person who verified that this worthless plot is sitting on roughly 300 million barrels of oil. The color drained from their faces. That's impossible," my father stammered. "We had this land surveyed years ago." "No," I corrected him, "you had the neighboring plots surveyed. Grandpa kept this piece quiet, he knew what was here, he was just waiting for someone smart enough to find it. Now, see here," my father's face was crimson with anger, "you can't." "What?" I cut him off. "Can't drill on my own property, can't start my own company, can't refuse to marry a cheating bastard to save his failing company?" Bradley stepped closer, panic starting to show. "Emma, be reasonable, we can work something out." "Like what, Bradley, a merger?" I smiled sweetly. "Actually, I've been talking to your board of directors, they're very interested in a different kind of deal, one that doesn't involve a marriage." His face turned pale. "You wouldn't." "I would, in fact, I did. The paperwork goes through next week. Wild Tomcat Energy will be acquiring controlling interest in Wilson Oil. Turns out," I added, my voice steady, "when you're sitting on $24 billion worth of oil, banks are very eager to help finance acquisitions." $24 billion, Thomas choked. "Give or take $1 billion, David added helpfully. My mother, who had been standing near the Mercedes, finally spoke up. "Darling, we're family, surely we can talk about this like adults." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You mean the people who threw me out, who tried to force me to marry a cheating fraud, who mocked this inheritance as worthless?" I shook my head. "No, Mother, you're not family, you're just people I used to know." "You'll regret this," my father growled, but it was more out of desperation than anything else. "Go ahead, contest the deed," I said, cutting him off. "The deed's ironclad, Grandpa made sure of that, you signed it over in front of witnesses, remember your big dramatic gesture?" David stepped forward. "I suggest you leave, we have work to do." They stood there, speechless, as the first trucks began arriving with drilling equipment. Massive machines rolled through the gate, sending clouds of dust into the air. Workers started unloading gear, ready to get to work. The future was arriving, and they weren't part of it. "Goodbye," I said firmly, "don't bother calling, I'll be too busy eating tumbleweeds." 6 months later, I stood on my cabin's porch, watching the sunset bathe the oil derricks in shades of gold. The first wells were producing far beyond our expectations. Wild Tomcat Energy was worth billions, and Bradley's former company, now just another subsidiary in my expanding empire. My phone buzzed with another text from Thomas. "Please, Emma, just talk to us, we're family." I deleted it without a second thought. Family isn't about blood, money, or business deals, it's about trust, respect, and recognizing someone's value beyond what they can do for you. Grandpa had seen that value in me. He'd known exactly what he was doing when he left me this land. He knew I'd be the one to see its true worth, not just the oil beneath it, but the freedom it represented. David walked up with 2 cups of coffee, a smile on his face. "First quarter profits are in, the board's going to be very happy." I took my cup, smiling back. "Think we should send my family a Christmas card, maybe a nice photo of the derricks?" He laughed. Success is the best revenge. Besides," he gestured at the thriving oil field before us, "I think they get the picture. They thought they could bury me in worthless dirt. Instead, I built an empire. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just proving people wrong, it's proving to yourself that you were right all along. I sipped my coffee and watched my derricks pump, each stroke not just bringing up oil, but a deep sense of vindication. The land wasn't worthless after all, and neither was I.